German trains.
I mean, that's like a meme in Germany. Yeah, like everything is super efficient except for the trains for some reason.
Yeah, we're getting on a fucking German train, dude. They've been a good train since 1939.
Are you talking about like Deutsche? I think I went on Deutsche Bahn. Are you talking about that one, or is it like some other like thing?
I don't know.
Standing room only.
I don't know. I had a pretty decent experience with German trains.
Jesus Christ.
I had a worse experience with their fucking airports. Those pieces of shit. They're like, I went there and I took out they're like, you need to take out all your electronics. Okay, I took out all my electronics. And then they get pissed at me. They're like, well, I told you to take out all of your electronics. I'm like, yeah, I took out all my electronics. And you're like, no, you didn't take this out. And they pull up my fucking phone charger cable. And I'm like, you can't be fucking serious. There's no fucking way. You're telling me that you're counting my fucking charging cable as like a fucking...
Why do you need to do that?
I don't know.
When I go to Japan, right?
This is something that no other country...
You just gotta go, but I didn't do the Holocaust!
What? Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Jesus, I can't...
You just look him right in the eyes when he's giving you shit for that cable and you say 6 million, motherfucker. 6 million.
Oh my
god.
But no, I think also it also differs a little bit based on the complexity of whatever they're using to scan and just how lazy the operator is.
It's so stupid though, because like when I go to Japan, right, they never tell me to take anything out, ever. Like, just let me through. Think about that. They don't bother. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever, just come through. Like, that is Japan. It's fantastic. It's super fast, super efficient, and they don't, my worst experience, I think, so far has been going through the airport in Rome, right, the international airport. Leaving is fantastic. It's great when you're departing, right? Super great experience. Coming in fucking sucks. Coming in really sucks. It's like, there is like one queue for everybody, and the queue lasts like probably 2 hours long, 2.5 hours probably, right? Where, they're supposed to split you into 3 different lines from, the American and like special passport holders or something. So it's like South Korea, America, Canada, Australia. And then they have the EU line, which is supposed to be the fast line. And then they have like the international line, which is basically everybody else. But they also, a lot of Americans end up in that line anyway because the other one is like too cramped. And there's the layout of the airport when you're coming in is fucking garbage. It is complete shit and it's easy to get lost. Imagine getting lost in like the lines. They have you basically in like the same corridor. It's looping around. Like the line itself, the queue itself is looping around because the corridor is not long enough. So it's so easy to get lost, or it's so easy to cut into someone else's spot because you don't realize that the queue is actually 2 columns long. That's so stupid. And the processing is garbage. It takes forever.
By the way, all of France is a shithole. There's not a single good place in France. Fuck France.
I believe you.
France is like one of the only countries in Europe where my knowledge of history, which is very minimal, I cannot identify a single time in France's history where it was in its prime or not a shithole.
Actually, France... Believe it or not, France actually had a lot of successful military conquests, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still a shithole.
They're always
of course, we revolutions. I mean, that kind of speaks for itself. If you are
revolutions by like 8 or something.
Exactly. So
it's insane.
I mean,
it's just like they can't hold together, man. It's like they're constantly getting into wars.
Yep. And they get into wars, and then they lose, and then they get pillaged, right? The attacking army, the defending army, I should say, will turn the tide back and then go all the way to Paris and then force them to sign some sort of agreement. Has happened multiple times. They did it with, with Russia, right? Yeah. Idiots.
The Eiffel Tower is not that cool.
No, not at all.
It's like
the best thing in Paris by any means. I hate Paris.
Yeah, like the Cathedral's pretty cool, right? Notre Dame. But the
Yeah.
Eiffel Tower is just like a power, like a power pylon. That's what it reminds me of. And it basically just looks like one. The only reason it's special is because it's in the middle of a field and there's nothing else there.
I took French from 1st grade to 12th grade just so I could choose not to speak it.
It's one of the more useless languages that you will ever have to learn, especially compared to Spanish.
Oh yeah, Spanish is useful. English is useful. Even German is, somewhat useful if you're in like manufacturing. You want to deal with Germans. But French, I mean, what the hell? What's the use out of it? You got nothing.
Yeah. I've got English, Russian, and French. That's what I've got.
Russia's good. Yeah, it's very useful.
Well, the
Chinese
crazy
is
thing
also
too,
really good.
if you look at the numbers of basically all the Romance languages, there's an astronomically small number of people who only speak those languages and not another language like English. So you can look at all the people that speak Italian and they try, like everybody in Italy, but a large portion of the population also speaks English. So actually, a very small number of people speak these languages. So if you're American from that regard, it's almost like they're dying.
Yep.
You'll be the leader.
Compare that to Japanese. There's a lot of people who speak Japanese, but they don't speak English. When I lived in Japan,
Japanese people.
Even the young people don't speak English. They need Google Translate. Whenever I talk to them, they'd be like, hold on a second, and then they'll be opening up their phones and then typing in, like furiously typing in what they want to say to me in English.
Yeah. Japan generally doesn't have great English. Korea has significantly better English, but
Oh yeah,
they're failing.
Koreans I know they all speak great English. Yeah.
But they're kind of a failing society right now. Yeah.
One of these days, Alice, one of these
When I was a kid, I was told to study French if I wanted to go into like international politics. Because French was the language of the time. Yeah, well, it is. Listen, if you ever wanted to go to surrender, make sure you learn French. I mean, it's been practically so overtaken by English by now.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, time has
I
passed.
think also now French is like a language that's kind of a
So
long
what
time.
happens here is like taking a shit.
I prefer to
like
think
because
of it as
One of these days, Alice.
because I think French people our entire economy depends on tourism, luxury products, and fucking the shit out of Africa. That's France's entire economy.
Mm-hmm. And now they don't have the third anymore. They lost all of it to Russia.
Wait, what? What are you talking about?
The African countries, they all revolted. They kicked out their French puppets.
No. A lot of them are still French puppets.
Are they?
Yes.
I mean, my understanding is that they are,
That's why the whole thing in Niger
Have you
happens.
been to Zimbabwe? It's all foie gras. Everywhere you go, foie gras, foie gras. The French own it, man.
Yeah. French, I think I saw something that's like 25% of like France's economy still comes from like indirectly through Africa or something like that.
Yeah, they're ripping people off of their uranium and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And they also control their currency.
Okay, that makes sense.
They also control their currency, and also whenever like something happens that doesn't benefit France, problems start arising in those countries, and it's kind of like colonialism, right?
Yeah. I mean, it is colonialism, right?
Yeah.
It's a relic of it.
Yeah, and they still control these countries, right? But now, since these countries aren't technically owned by them, they're controlled by these dictators, which France itself are kind of propping up through aid. And because it's that situation, they can basically not invest at all in actually making the countries function properly. Because if it was actually, if they were still owned by France, they would actually have to start like putting in effort into making sure these countries start functioning properly, right?
Yeah.
But
since take the resources.
Yeah. Then now it's just like for them it's better, right? They don't don't have the image issue of France isn't properly investing in these countries. We just take whatever the fuck we want out of these countries, and there's nothing they can do about it. You know, every single example of like a successful country in Africa has like completely been destroyed.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
I feel like the French did a really poor job when it came to colonialism. You know, you have Vietnam, you have the African countries. You compare that to the British, they have successors. You know, they have Singapore, they've got Malaysia, they've got India, right? And you look at the South American countries, the ones that were like ruled by the British. I mean, they're pretty good. In America, obviously, it's like they actually gave a shit. You know, they actually gave a shit, and they installed proper infrastructure and systems and legal systems and education, and they cared about their populace. I'm not saying colonialism is like this magnificent thing, but at least the British tried, right? And to an extent, they were pretty successful. The French never bothered. They didn't give a shit.
I'm still trying to get over this notion of one government controlling another government's treasury and being able to print. Like, that explains so much about Zimbabwe's economy.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, because like if we could outsource our printing, like we would do exactly what we're doing, except we'd be dumping all of the economic consequences somewhere else, and we'd do it with impunity. It'd get even worse. It's exactly what's happened in Zimbabwe. Their currency is inflated to shit. It's fucked.
The French have a lot to answer for.
I mean, I don't mean to derail the conversation, but I have a question with regards to Tesla. Like, how much? I mean, I don't know if you guys have seen the clip of Elon talking about a fleet-wide hack of Tesla, which would be the end of the whole industry kind of thing. I mean, how much do we know about the sort of the software architecture of how Tesla works, like, and how secure it is? Like, I mean, I know a thing or two. Like, I mean, they have their own bug bounty program and whatnot, but do we know anything else?
I don't think they talk to each other in a way that stupid Netflix movie makes it seem, right? The one where all the Teslas get taken over by AI or something, by a rogue hack. Yeah, I don't think it works like that, though. I wouldn't be worried at all.
By the way, have any of you heard about Katanga?
Katanga? Sounds kind of familiar, but no. But illuminate me.
It used to be a country in Africa that was like semi-successful. Actually, they had like infrastructure. They had like split off from the Congo, and the founder and like the leader of Katanga was basically this capitalistic guy, and the Congo was, I think, communistic government.
Yeah.
And they were actually decently successful. They managed to build a lot of infrastructure. They had white people coming in and also like leading people. You know, how they had factories actually building things. They were actually a decently successful country. And then basically the UN peacekeepers came in and they basically overthrew the government and they handed it to Katanga. Handed Katanga over to back to the Congo.
Wow. Gross. Actually gross.
Okay, so let me read this too. After the end of Belgian rule in the Congo, the sovereign province of Katanga declared its independence from the central Congolese government. The president of Katanga was Moise Tshombe, a pro-Western anti-communist leader. Katanga was supported by both South Africa and Rhodesia, but neither the United States nor the Soviet Union agreed to recognize it. The two superpowers supported the centralized Congolese government and its communist-aligned leader, Patrice Lumumba. Katanga was better administered and more prosperous than the rest of the Congo. Skilled white technicians supervised large numbers of black factory workers who made better wages than they would have done anywhere else in the country. With the support of both the US and the USSR, United Nations troops crushed Katangese resistance and forced it back under the thumb of the centralized government.
So essentially, they did to Katanga what they did to Rhodesia as well, right? Rhodesia was a relatively successful country. It didn't last for very long, but that's because both the United States and the USSR decided they were going to crush it. Yeah. Like, that's what actually happened with Rhodesia, which eventually.
What's Rhodesia called now?
Wait,
Wait.
It is? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Pardon my ignorance.
yeah, but
Yeah, it was
wasn't the UN also involved in the fall of Katanga? And
Yes.
I'm thinking about
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
Well,
There
that's what
was
it's
a
saying.
huge skirmish.
Yeah, that's what it's saying. According to American anti-communist groups, the UN troops had originally presented themselves to Shombe as peacekeepers and vowed not to take part of Katanga's internal affairs. Once they had amassed enough of these peacekeepers on Katanga's territory, UN forces betrayed Shombe and attacked, striking both military and civilian targets. The UN also expelled all civil service and military personnel of European descent.
Wow.
All sides agree. All sides agreed. The UN forces attack Katanga and force. And the UN disputes this version of events. All sides agree, however, that the UN forces attacked Katanga and forced it back under the dominion of the centralized Congolese government. The fledgling state's infrastructure and industrial capacity was badly damaged by the war and has never recovered. Today, Congo is one of the poorest places on earth.
They did this so they could exploit it. Both the USSR and the United States decided that they were going to exploit all of these territories, Katanga being one of them, Rhodesia being the other, because they didn't want these countries to become autonomous, self-actualized, right? And it didn't matter if the people running it were white. They were white, right? It didn't matter. They were like, no, fuck you guys. We don't want a competition. We don't want Africa to rise as a continent. We would rather it be subservient, as it is today, entirely subservient to the West. United
Also,
States, France.
what a lot of people don't recognize about Africa is that for like a civilization to progress properly, you need domesticated animals, proper like domesticated animals that you can use for farming and you can use for food and you can keep in herds and they breed very easily. There was very little of that in both the Americas and Africa, and it was exactly. When you look at it, where were like the only places on Earth where that was actually
China and Europe.
Europe and Asia,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Which is why those two places developed as much as they did. And you saw Africa and the Americas didn't really develop that much because they didn't have access
Animal
to
husbandry
Yeah.
led to the taming of the horse, and that enabled these civilizations to march vast distances versus be confined to a 2-mile radius.
Exactly. And Africa had the zebra, but good luck fucking taming a zebra.
No, you can't really. Untamable.
Yeah.
Man. It also doesn't help that nowadays Africa is artificially kept down through foreign aid, right? A big portion of US aid is to simply keep them down. They give them money so that they don't farm on their own. There's no requirement for them to farm, first of all. Secondly, they lose money. If they open a farm there, they're not going to make any money because what are they doing? They have to compete against free food. How can you compete against something that's free, right? The United Nations gives them free food, they're going to take the free food. So they are artificially kept down and prevented from advancing, from becoming, bettering themselves. They don't develop skills. A lot of their best people are simply, taken by other countries, imported.
Well, that's like I said, that's the crux of the whole brain drain argument. But it's just if you're looking at it from the standpoint of the United States or even some of these post-national authorities, it's almost better in the sort of in the sense that you don't want a nation popping up that all of a sudden is organized, has its own interests that might jeopardize your hegemony or might kind of throw a wrench in the plans of the predictive flow of the world. Like let's say Africa has a lot of developed and powerful nations and they decided, okay, we want to side with BRICS. Well, now the United States is in trouble because now that just suddenly gave your enemies a very powerful tool. So it's like rather rendering them more sterile or neutral, so to speak, on the world stage is just preferable to either having to cede a lot of your authority and actually make trade deals where you favor them,
I don't know.
having.
I don't know if that's the case. I don't think it's that case. I think, as evidenced by Russia, I don't think that after the Soviet Union fell, I don't think the United States generally thinks like that. About like they kind of think they're on top of the world generally, and they don't need to worry about adversaries much. You see that with the rise of China. You see that with the rise of Russia. They haven't really taken it seriously until it becomes like a serious issue. I think this is more about the fact that it's Africa is a very very resource rich area, and it was very underdeveloped. It was really the only place in the world because you took over the Americas already. You populated a bunch of people, and Africa was not developed because of the fact that there weren't, again, as we discussed, farming and animals that you could domesticate, and so considering the fact that it was both resource rich and people hadn't advanced much because of the lack of domestication. It created kind of the ideal place to exploit for resources.
So one thing here that America has severely underestimated Russia and China, right? China more so than anything else because they gave them so much help in 1978, let them into United Nations, and then later on, Bill Clinton did a whole free trade agreement in 1996, right? One thing though that America hyper focused on in the 1980s was the rise of Japan. Japan used to probably be the world's second largest economy in terms of technology.
It was the world's second largest economy. Yes, it was.
Yeah, and so
probably it was actually.
The issue at that time is the what's the name of the council? It's like the Chamber of Commerce, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, was so worried about the rise of Japan that they put out a lot of propaganda against it. If you ever watch Blade Runner or the movie Aliens, right, or Alien, every corporation in there is Japanese, right? It's like, oh, here's what the future looks like. It's all these Japanese companies, Weyland Yutani, right? That's a Japanese
The U.S. generally isn't too worried about this. I don't know if this is a correct attitude or incorrect attitude, but they're generally not worried about adversaries until it's like
not now.
It's starting
now
to get
they're not, but in the 80s they were, right? So what happened was the reason Japan's economy is stagnated for the past 30 years or so is because in the 1980s the Chamber of Commerce came in and they lobbied the Reagan government to issue, I forget exactly what bill they passed, but it essentially fucked over the Japanese. It fucked over them big time to the point where it killed their economy. There's a reason why Japan hasn't been building since like 1990, Like, yeah, there are big companies there and Sony is pretty huge, but it's no longer the like it used to be like huge, like number 2 in the world, and it's been stagnating ever since as a result of America's decision to keep it down. And big reason for that was because of Japanophobia, right? And this is a corporate thing. I don't think the average American really cared about the Japanese that much. But the industries were, and they took a lot of measures to protect American companies against Japanese companies in particular. And they did this by outsourcing a lot of the manufacturing, not to Japan anymore, because Japan used to be like this huge manufacturing thing, right? Everything was made in Japan, and high quality stuff too. Like if you look at electronics in the 1980s, anything that was made in the UK was fucking garbage. And there's like a whole thing with Sinclair, right? He caused that shit. But beyond that, stuff that's made in Japan is actually good. And so American companies decided they were going to undercut Japan by propping up China and China's manufacturing sector by moving all of the manufacturing there to undercut Japanese stuff. Because the Chinese could make some of those maybe almost as good, but nowhere close as good. But very cheap.
Also
significant manpower.
Something that's also underestimated quite a bit is the rise of the Korean manufacturing. Especially Samsung.
I underestimated that as well. Samsung.
Samsung. Yeah, exactly. They completely fucked over Japanese products because they were cheaper and they were quite high quality.
Correct. Yeah, that's right.
Into the 90s, when the economic miracle finally began to wane, that's when you start to see a lot of the other, not necessarily adversaries, but their neighbors start to rise up. And that's a common tactic. Balance your, not necessarily enemies, but balance your rivals against their regional rivals, and then allow them to compete, but do so in a way where you're sort of putting your finger on the scale.
Also, you have to consider that South Korea literally benefited from the biggest demographic dividend of any country on earth, which is usually if you look at like the pyramid of like the population, you have what you're supposed to have is that the youngest people are the biggest proportion, and as you go up, it starts dwindling and until there's like no people left at like the very top of the age. That's called the population pyramid. And if you get to a situation where you're in the center, most of your population is in the center, you get something called a demographic dividend, which is
most of your guys are working age.
Yeah, exactly. Most of your population is working age, and you have less people that you need to take care of from both younger and older. And South Korea, one of the things that South Korea did was they actually gave up a lot of the children to be adopted by people from other countries, and those South Koreans were,
Free from their burdens.
Yeah, freed from the burdens, so the government didn't have to spend money on them, the economy didn't have to spend money on them. And meanwhile, these children that were adopted, they were given like education, and they went to universities in other countries, meaning other countries had to bear the cost of these South Korean children, and they gave them the opportunity of coming to South Korea and contributing to the South Korean economy. So they benefited massively from this economic dividends.
And that brings us back to sort of where Japan is now, and actually parts of Korea are now with the population collapse.
Korea's the worst, 0.84.
Yeah.
No, it's less. It's less than that actually. It's closer to 0.7 now.
Jesus,
They have that massive elderly population, and Japan's actually particularly known for this, and it's just
I think right now it's actually like literally mathematically impossible to save Korea. There's like almost
Japan's still doable.
Japan is still doable.
I can do it.
Yeah, just send Chase over. He'll impregnate all the Japanese girls.
Y'all saw the meme about the breeding visas. I mean, honestly, if we're going to be honest, that's given the state of where America is as far as the dating market for white men in America, and I mean, men in general. Yeah. Are you?
I mean, going to do your part, go for it. I mean, they're not going to say no. They're fine. It's completely voluntary. So I mean, if they want to date American men, go for it. Fuck it.
Well, you can create your patriotic splooge to save Japan. That's literally where we're at.
You know what's really ironic with the United States essentially forcing the Japanese economy to stagnate by helping China, by propping up China, is that now China is the world's number one in manufacturing, and it's become America's largest rival. It's like America literally created its own enemy. And the thing about China is that they remember things, right? They remember things. They remember the century of humiliation in which all of these other Western countries decided that they were going to fuck China over for 100 years, right? That's what they remember. And they're going to strike back. And I don't mean militarily. I mean, like, they're literally, they're dominating. Like, look at it right now. They're dominating,
Dominating what?
All the industries, everything.
Which industries?
Manufacturing.
To be fair, with manufacturing, it's mostly the assembly process. China's not manufacturing most of the things that are high value.
They're not designing it, for sure,
No, it's not just a design.
No, just in general, the big problem, just in general, making it as well. Like, a lot of the components are actually made in Europe and will always be made in Europe because the level of talent and precision is like, nah.
No, a lot of the stuff is made in Korea, a lot of the stuff is made in Taiwan, a lot of the stuff is made in Japan.
Yeah,
it's not mostly made in Europe.
It depends on what you're looking at.
Most of it is made in Europe, but not most of it.
I will say though,
it depends on what you're looking at.
It depends on what you're looking at, I guess. Yeah, obviously with some things you would want something from.
There's got a lot of capital though, that's the thing. They can prop up a lot of industries in ways that other more democratic governments are unable to do.
I think that there's a lot more. This is a very I don't mean this as an insult, but this is like a very leftist like argument, right? Where they're like just give more money into this and that will fix it. Right? This is like you can't just throw money at something and have it like fix whatever issues.
Well, they have economies of scale, or that's the thing, like they don't have to make things to be, bleeding edge. They just need to be good enough and sell really, really well, right? If you look at the EVs that they sell, like in Europe, they're taking over the European car market.
Oh yeah, with
right?
the EVs actually, I would say they are leading,
They're really good.
especially with the battery technology, especially
designed by a lot of the Aston Martin team.
Yeah.
They literally just bought the whole team.
That's more of
and say, hey, come work for us.
That's more of a negative than a positive, but.
Make that argument, sure.
Yeah, Aston Martin breaks down immediately after you buy it. Yeah,
BYD is pretty good though. I mean, like they're certainly doing something right, and they realize that there's going to be a shortfall of expertise in certain fields, right? Like design. The Chinese are maybe not the best at it. That's car design. So they're like, hey, why don't we just like buy these German engineers and have them do it? Like the guys who work for Ferrari or Lamborghini. Like if we want to make a fast car, just buy this guy. Give this guy a few $1 million. I mean, he's going to come over. And they do.
Yeah,
they accept the offer. I mean, I'd accept the offer.
But you also have to consider that. China has actually been very intelligent, especially with their battery industry. So one of the things they did was with the electric car specifically, they actually started the process of turning their entire public transportation system electric. So all the buses, they actually took the effort of turning them electric. And they also secured all the mining rights in Africa for mining the materials they actually need.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they also gave some subsidies for electric cars and kind of gave some penalties for car companies that were gas car companies because they realized that they would never dominate that field because that was already established. And one,
by the way, for the mining, they actually are pulling a lot of shit out of Australia to the point where even the Australians are very pissed about it because they're not really paying their dues. It's very annoying.
Yeah, and hilariously enough, too, they can double dip because they actually save their own lithium and they actually get lithium from Australia instead. So
and they're depriving other countries from having that lithium because it's now Chinese owned.
Yeah, exactly. And
the market.
With batteries, they've actually entirely they've done the smartest thing they could have done. They're absolutely leading in batteries specifically, if we want to argue that.
Yeah.
But
they have a nuclear battery. That's pretty cool.
Right now they're leading in Gen 4 nuclear reactors as well.
Yeah. Sweet. Here's the thing. Huawei, right? Like the 5G technology.
Yeah.
The guy who invented 5G was
Turkish guy.
Yeah, that's right. The Turkish guy. He tried to come to America, and America's like, no, your H-1B doesn't really match up or something, and then they kicked him out. And Huawei was like, hey, come work for us, and then he developed it for them, and now Huawei's 5G technology is what's running all mobile telecommunications. Thanks, guys. Because of America's stupid immigration system.
No, a lot of
the Chinese have it.
A lot of it is also Nokia as well.
Sure, you can make that argument, but Huawei was the first one to actually make it cheap and affordable, and they subsidized the construction of it in other countries. Here's what they do in Southeast Asia, right? They go there, because those countries want to modernize to 5G, right? And so they have to do all the bidding on contracts. Nokia will be saying, hey, let's use our technology. American companies will do the same thing, and China's like, you know what? We'll build it for free. We'll make it for free. We'll literally do it for free. And all you have to do is secure a contract for future development. And of course, these countries want to save money, and it's a deal you can't really refuse. I mean, it's free. Fuck. It doesn't provide maintenance. So they take it, and that's the reason why Huawei is so fucking massive. They're literally willing to subsidize the cost of the development of their own technology in all these countries. I mean, if you're in these countries, wouldn't you take that deal? It's pretty good. It's better than paying through your ass to some American company.
But yeah, it's I think it's China has been very clever with some of the things. But in terms of a lot of things that are high quality, high value manufacturing, assembly of things, you hear a lot about how iPhones are manufactured in China. They're not. They're really not. What there are is assembled in China, and assembly is not really a very
No, it's just assembly.
assembly is not a very profitable business.
Mhm.
And it, you know, it's even when they are designing chips, it's like very basic chips that don't really matter, and they're not very profitable anyway. All
Like
that,
12 nanometer or something.
no, I think
Or
China's SMIC's best chips are at 7 nanometers.
7 now?
Yeah, 7. But they're gonna really struggle. Really struggle. I don't know about that.
Depends on the use case, right? I mean, if it
depends on the use
or
case.
something,
Yeah.
7 nanometer is fine.
Yeah, more a car. Yeah, it should be fine. But you're never gonna be on the bleeding edge with that sort of stuff.
You're not gonna get AI shit with that.
Yeah, and it's So SMIC is the Chinese manufacturer and of chips, and they've managed to do a pretty good job with the restrictions they have. A lot of it is actually just stealing patents from TSMC and stealing tree stickers from TSMC, but still, despite that, they've managed to do a pretty good job. But they're probably, I'm not going to say never, but they're actually not. I'm going to say they're never going to manage to get below 7 nanometers in time for it to matter. Right? Because by the time they manage to get to 7, they're probably going to eventually get to 7 nanometers and below. They're already at 7 nanometers, but I'm below. By the time they manage to actually get that, it pretty much won't matter. They'll still be generations behind. But yeah.
What if they prove you wrong? How would that make you feel?
I highly doubt that. Because you have to think about, so with manufacturing, this is what you have to think about, right? So the best optics for the ASML machine has to be produced for Zeiss, right? So that's a company with the world's best, specifically focused on that, and ASML has to have all of that, right? It has to take all of that and build the EUVL machine, which, by the way, some dumbass told me some random mechanics in America could make that work. I sent that to Adrian. We were both like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? He's like, oh yeah, it's not that difficult. A random mechanic can do it in America. It's just, it's just that the patent's not letting it happen. Anyway. Sure, bro. Whatever you say.
It's not happening.
Yeah. But so you have to have ASML, which is the world's best, and then you have TSMC, which is the world's best, and then you have Samsung, which is the world's best in memory chips. I think except AI memory chips. I think with that is
it just has storage.
But I think with the AI chip specifically, let me double check. I think it's SK Hynix that's actually the best.
I love SK Hynix. Isn't that like Korean, right? That's Korean, right?
Yeah. So the Koreans Koreans are the leading country when it comes to memory chip manufacturing specifically. So all the world's best memory chips come from South Korea. But memory chips are a horrible business. Horrible business. Like they're actually slowly driving Samsung to bankruptcy.
How come?
Because okay. So with chips like from TSMC. Oh, hold on. Before we even get to that, let me finish the point I was trying to make. We're kind of getting off.
Okay.
Yeah. So you have to for China to beat out, they have to beat an international monopoly in every single one of these industries.
Yeah, the
chain. China, the entire chain. China has to beat all of that and also reach the scale of TSMC. So semiconductors are a very winner takes all business, right? The bigger you are, the more easy it is to actually run the business.
Right.
And the easier it is to win because you literally do better. You literally get better chips as you produce more chips, right? So
Yeah.
how exactly are you supposed to compete, right? If you're small, right? Because you can't you can only produce better chips if you have the scale, right? So if you don't have the scale, you're automatically not going to produce better chips, right? So it's a very very winner takes all industry. So that's
The one shortcut, I would probably say the one shortcut would be if they finally, if they develop the infrastructure around in order to have enough money to maybe match EUV lithography technology and then take Taiwan altogether.
No.
And boom, they just sort of shortcutted it.
No, because TSMC already has like turn-off switches for like all the machinery, so that's there in case time.
The DoD forced them to do that.
Yeah.
The DoD
Yeah.
literally forced them to do
In
it.
case
They got really mad.
Yeah, in case Taiwan gets invaded, they want to make sure that China doesn't get shit. And even like I said, even if China discovers an alternative to EUV, which actually I think Canon already has, that's also cheaper, but it's slightly worse. But even if they discover an alternative to EUV, or they just say fuck it, we're gonna ignore the patent.
Did you cut out? Oh shit.
No, I didn't cut out. Someone sent me a DM.
My app died.
No. So it's just yeah. And on top of that, you also need the scale to actually be able to compete, and that's really where they're going to be struggling. So by the time they get EUV machine, not to mention each generation kind of adds on to the previous generation, right? So if you're just skipping generations, you're going to miss out on a lot of knowledge of how to actually make these chips properly and how to get your yield up, which is going to make your job a whole lot more difficult. That's actually one of the things that Intel is struggling with right now because they're skipping a bunch of generations, meaning they didn't actually learn anything.
They don't know how to implement Vcache properly.
Yeah, it's a lot more than.
I mean, this is one of the examples, right? Because they are literally trying to skip a generation ahead of.
They're trying to skip generations.
They're failing to.
Yeah,
because
but
they never
So they
did
can't
what
go
EMP did.
smaller.
So back to like the memory chip business. The memory chip business, unlike the chip like semiconductor business with like the CPUs and GPUs and whatever, it's very dependent on basically just basic specs, and that's it, right? So what's the memory speed? What's the clock speed? What's the cache? What's the specifications? It does not really fucking matter if it's from Samsung or if it's from SK Hynix. So because it's a business that's very profitable. It's a business that's very profitable, but it's a business that once you've made the technology, it doesn't have a moat. Right. So anyone that can make it to the same level.
It's just done.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Yeah.
So
it's a race to the bottom in terms of cost.
Samsung's I think Samsung Electronics, half of its like revenue comes from like the chip business, but 90% of its profit does, right? So they always have to constantly reinvest all their money into this over and over and over again because they're always like at risk of losing the memory chip business. But they have to they always have to continue doing this because this is like their pretty much the only business that's keeping the business afloat.
Yeah.
Their memory chip business, because their semiconductor business with competing with TSMC isn't going super well.
Right.
Yeah. So
you don't really hear about Samsung chips very often.
exactly. If you do it specifically with memory chips, because that is a very profitable business. But again, there's no moat around it, really.
What do you think of all these smaller memory companies like Lexar and Patriot and what is it, Kingston and
they're all buying their memory. They're all buying their memory chips from.
So they're just adding their bullshit onto it, right?
Yeah,
like it's just
exactly.
Marketing.
Yeah. They're not actually manufacturing their own memory. They're buying it from other companies, and they're just putting it into RAM chips or whatever.
Who makes the controllers? Like what is it, a Phison or whatever? Yeah, on the memory chips that you find on the on hard drives. Who makes those?
I don't actually know.
Yeah, I think it's Phison. Yeah.
Let me check.
I'm curious about that. I always hear about Phison. I don't hear about other companies, but I do know that the Chinese have like a few of their own, and they kind of suck. So if you want really shitty controllers, then get a Chinese hard drive, and it's not fast or anything. Even though it might be using Samsung memory, the controller is what controls everything.
Hmm. You might be right. Let me double check.
Yeah.
But if it's with Samsung specifically, Samsung has their own. Yeah. Yeah.
What the fuck?
What?
I gotta read something. So somebody posted,
Yes, SK Hynix.
something about
SK Hynix and
There you go ahead first.
SK Hynix and Samsung both use their own in-house controllers on their branded ones. But the ones that SK Hynix sells are often used with Phison controllers to other companies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Western Digital and stuff. Yeah, and then they assemble it all together, and they got the WD Black, for example.
That's not.
So what were you saying?
That's more. Actually, that's a bit different. Those aren't really memory chips.
Right. Yeah.
Those are. Actually, there's recently been recent technology from Seagate. That was quite interesting.
What have they done?
It's called HAMR. It allows for these HDDs that have over 30 terabytes.
Wow.
Yeah.
How durable are they?
Heat-assisted magnetic recording.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how fast are they compared to an SSD?
Oh no, they're definitely slower than an SSD because they're physical
storage. Then.
No, I think they're still faster than a typical HDDs, but
this is like crap.
Yeah, but because SSD is literally just a memory, right? It's literally just memory, but with
these are controllers.
There's like a physical disk that has to spin. Right?
Yeah.
So because of that, that's much slower. You get much slower speeds.
So I'm guessing the advantage of the HAMR would be in its longevity, like the read-write cycles, or
no, it just
storage space.
The biggest one is right now is storage space because If I remember correctly, I haven't checked in a while, but like the biggest ones before were like 16, 18 terabytes. From Seagate, and this will be like
16.
yeah, so this is like this is 30 plus terabytes.
Wow. That's good enough for storage when you're like storing a whole bunch of like archival stuff, right? I mean, it's not something you want to use in a live environment. Let's say you do video editing, you probably don't want to use that for like live editing because it'd be too slow. But however, if you have a whole bunch of material,
it depends on.
Is it that fast? Can you like live edit a 4K video on that?
Depends. Is it raw or are we talking about raw video?
Raw. Of course, raw. Yeah, not MP4s.
Raw.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Raw probably not, but MP4s, it could handle MP4s.
MP4s for sure. Yeah, if you want to just make I don't know, like
by the way,
network things.
By the way, MP4. This is kind of like MP4 isn't really a format, codec format. It's more of a container format.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah, because there's so many different, like HEVC, for example, that would be a proper codec, right? HEVC.
HPVC.
HEVC.
Oh yes. That's I think that's the one that iPhones use, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and then you have for audio you've got like FLAC.
You've got ALAC, FLAC, ALAC,
Opus
as well. Yeah.
We've got Opus. You've got VAV. Yeah. So
I like AUG.
And
Opus is AUG, right? Yeah.
Well, I would generally recommend you use either Opus or FLAC. That's that will be.
Yeah, that's lossless. Yeah.
FLAC is lossless. Yeah. Opus is lossy, but it's lossy in a way that the human ear literally cannot distinguish.
Right, because it cuts off the anything below the 20 hertz frequency and anything above what is it, like 20,000?
There's a bit more than that, but there's a bit more than that, but so it's not so with Opus you're not losing anything that the human ear can't hear.
No.
Right.
Yeah. What do you think of titles thing?
Hold on,
what
the fuck?
What?
Wait, did he leave?
Who?
We had. Oh wait. Oh wait, hold on. I love this guy. I'm gonna bring him up. Hey Eric, how's it going?
Yo, what's up? How's it going?
Yeah, this guy's hilarious.
Nice. Appreciate it.
Really, is he? I haven't seen you before. So, what do you do?
Me? I run a company and then a fund. Oh wait, is that you? Wait, I've seen your like tweets all over. Big fan.
Thank you.
And then I also
about to bring up
Idol. I don't know if you guys know Lonsdale and Elon. I go to their school, so that's the other thing I do.
Oh, cool. Nice. Was it University of Pennsylvania or what? I forget.
No.
Where did you go to?
So they sell.
Oh, okay.
So it's a Texas, or it used to be the TITS, but not the university.
Without anything else, I shall do so. Again, single file order line.
Nice. Yeah, what kind of fucking? I'm looking at the gameplay from Elon's live stream. What fucking kind of monk build is that? That sure looks interesting. Looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'll check it out. It does.
If we ever do hardcore, I want to play that. We first have to just like get past all of the stuff we're doing right now, and yeah.
I'll look into it.
There's another reason that when people say you're Elon, I'm like no, because you need to. You would know what build he's playing if you were.
Right now I'm going back and looking.
I hate marketing gimmicks, I was just thinking of Tidal, the streaming service, and they do the whole lossless thing. But they also put this thing out called MQA, and it's like supposedly, it sounds better than lossless, and it only works with certain kinds of receivers, like audio receivers and amplifiers.